What's up, YouTube? This is Corey from the OverLook, and we go over the books you may have overlooked. Well, we did it. We got to 1,000 subscribers. We are officially YouTube partners. We are also, as of last week, Twitch affiliates. So hop on over there if you ever want to hang out with us while we play games or record some of our shows. Also, lastly, we have a Discord. Join. Let's talk about stuff. Anyway, this is a 4-part story starring Hawkeye, who happens to be the star of the new DLC drop from Marvel's Avengers. You should already know who the villain is if you clicked on the icon, so tell me how you think he stacks up to his MCU counterpart. After a recent adventure took Clint Barton and his ex-wife, Bobby Morse, aka Mockingbird, to Russia to aid Natasha Romanova, the Black Widow, in stopping a terrorist who was not only targeting spies such as Mockingbird and Natasha, but masquerading in Clint's old Ronin costume. Their mission was victorious, but not without some damage. Although his reputation survived unscathed, his abilities as an expert shot have taken a beating. Currently, at the New York City harbor, the Avengers face off against the 6th iteration of the Lethal Legion. This motley crew of villains turned into heroes to only once again return to villainy is comprised of Absorbing Man, Mr. Hyde, Tiger Shark, and the Grey Gargoyle. The 4 villains stand outmatched by the Earth's mightiest heroes. On the side of good, you have Iron Man, Thor, Jessica Drew, also known as Spider-Woman, and Hawkeye. Hawkeye pulls out his bow, boasting that the Lethal Legion is outpowered, with no chance of winning, and they are about to hurt in places they didn't even know they could bruise. The members of the Legion find Hawkeye's notions laughable, stating that Hawkeye is speaking so confidently because of his close proximity to his allies. Regardless, the Lethal Legion has taken down Avengers before, and so they shall once again. Hawkeye calls the villains on their bluff, pulls back his bowstring, and releases an arrow. And the arrow misses. Seeing this as both a confirmation and a sign, Absorbing Man lifts up an armored truck and tosses it at Hawkeye. Iron Man swoops in and destroys the car in mid-air with a repulsor blast. Probably not the best time to miss, he advises. Later, in the Avengers mansion, Tony stops Clint in the hallway to speak with him about something urgent. Clint continues down the hallway saying, "That kind of deep, serious voice may work in boardrooms or on the ladies, gajillionaire playboy, but not me. You want to talk. I don't. Pretty easy concept." Then, Clint becomes lightheaded. His footsteps stutters and he almost trips. Tony tells him that he can't keep running from this. Tony has gone over recordings from every outing Clint's been on with the Avengers since he got back from Russia. "You took a blow to the head. It was in the report. Since then, you've been off target by a range of .07 to as much as 3% on the majority of your shots." Clint brushes it off. "I was distracted by Tiger Shark. Stripes our last season. It was very unnerving. Besides, we won." Tony continues with the topic at hand. "I've run the probable scenarios based on the scans. I was hoping I was wrong, so I called in a second opinion." Tony walks Clint into the nearby medbay and they find Steve Rogers and Dr. Donald Blake, the man who shares a body and consciousness with Thor, waiting on them. Clint attempts to laugh off the uncomfortable confrontation, but it doesn't take long for Tony to tell him what is really on their mind. "You're going blind, Clint," he says flatly, in an attempt to get Clint to take the situation seriously. He then lets the doctor speak. Dr. Blake tells Clint that when he was in Russia, he suffered blunt force trauma to the back of his head. His cowl absorbed some of the blow, but not nearly enough. Since that time, there has been swelling building, putting pressure on the occipital lobe in his brain. It's where vision is processed, or, in Clint's case, is failing to process. Any sort of operation to relieve the pressure at this point would be unwise at best. Worst case scenario, fatal. Obviously, they'll want to run more tests immediately and continue to monitor the process in order to buy time where they can. Occipital blindness doesn't affect the corneas, so Clint's eyes are still fine. It's the way his brain receives the images that's going to worsen. As the swelling grows, Clint's perception will be off. He's already noticed a change in depth and perspective. That will worsen as the pressure affects his auditory and visual input. Clint may start seeing or hearing differently. Stationary objects may seem to suddenly move. His mind may shift to past experiences in trying to process his current situation, until the swelling reaches a point that shuts off the occipital lobe, leaving him completely blind. In the past, Clint remembers his father always being one to speak with the backside of his fist. His mother would do what she could to keep his father's focus on her when worse would come to worse, which resulted in Clint's father hurriedly dragging her away by the hand with an open wine bottle in his other, sloppily chugging down the intoxicants. That was the last time Clint saw his parents alive. They died that night in a car crash. Sometimes, a robber or a supervillain takes away the ones you love, setting you on a path to one day be a hero. Other times, it's a lot more simple, like seeing what happens to someone you don't want to grow up to be like. After that, Clint and his older brother Barney were sent to St. Ignatius's home for orphaned boys. One day, after 6 years, Clint finally listens to Barney and the two boys run away. They did everything they could to try to have a normal life, but that's just not in the cards for every kid. For some kids, though, life throws a joker into the deck, a wild card. You get to do one of the crazy things you only hear about, the things some kids with normal lives dream of doing. You get to run away and join the circus. The Carson Carnival of Traveling Wonders quickly became a home for the two boys. In order to prove their worth, they were given manual tasks around the grounds, such as shoveling up the excrement from the animals, even the elephant. This is also where Clint and Barney met Swordsman, their once and future sword trainer, as well as the most dangerous act in all the land. They say you don't get to pick your family, but in rare cases, the weirdest things can happen. Your family chooses you. A moment that changes everything. You think you'll never be alone again. It was that way with Swordsman. You see your whole life before you, just like you dreamed. At least, that's what you hope. But what do kids know? Later, Hawkeye arrives in Iron Man's lab, pretending as if he is already blind. Tony? That's you? Say something. I can't. Iron Man jumps up from his desk to aid his teammate until Hawkeye reveals it was all a joke. Clint then looks around Tony's lab and says, "So this is where the genius happens, right? Impress me." Tony chuckles, picks up Hawkeye's mask from the desk, and hands it to him. "Try this on. I think I got the measurements right, even without the swelling. you've still got a big head. Clint scoffs. Medical jokes? Stick to the pickup lines. You're way better at that. Tony ignores Clint, instead telling him that the sensors in his new cowl should help Clint's brain register what's real and what isn't. Instead of relying on what the naked eye sees, the tech in the cowl will give Clint a full spectrum of UV and motion detectors that will enable him to track movements. He will now be able to tell what objects are actually moving and existing on this plane. Tony, however, is still working on the auditory functions to help enhance hearing, but he does have another surprise. A mini version for everyday wear, Tony says as he holds up a pair of modified sunglasses. And it matches everything in my closet. You give the best gifts, Clint jokes. But as Clint removes his cowl, for a split second, he sees Tony in an older, more classic version of his Iron Man armor. And this worries him. In the past, Clint finds himself in the hospital with 2 separate leg braces. His brother Barney berates him, asking how on earth Clint just let the swordsman leave after everything the swordsman had done for him. He was embezzling money, Clint says from the hospital bed. Barney explains that the swordsman was just getting back what he was owed from the circus. Yeah, and he broke my legs in the process. Barney storms out the room, telling Clint, "You did that on your own, Clint. If that's how you want to live, fine. Be on your own. We'll see where your life leads you." Strange enough, this was the same day that Clint became the student of a second member of the circus, Trickshot. Trickshot told him that day, "Don't worry, Barton. You're not alone. You're going to be fine. Have the life you always wanted. Can't you see it with those hawk eyes of yours? Old Trickshot will make sure of that, if you let me." And so Clint learned how to wield a bow, and Trickshot made sure he never forgot the golden rule. Always have a trick up your sleeve. So, naturally, when Clint found Barney and Trickshot teaming up with the mob for a Robin Hood-esque heist, Clint did not approve. "This isn't what I signed up for," he told his teacher. "My brother's hurt because of my talent. We're leaving." Trickshot pulled back a number of arrows and each hit Clint in critical points. The last words Trickshot said to him that day were, "Just remember, you owe me. You'll always be who you are because of me." It's strange. You make your way in the world, sometimes trying to just be happy, even when everything around you sucks. And when that doesn't work, you find yourself wanting to make others happy. If you're lucky, you find something in these that make you happy. You may even be so blinded by happiness that you overlook things. You never want it to end, so you overlook things. Even enough to ignore you're playing with fire. You turned a blind eye because you're too dumb to not look, or because you want to protect yourself and stay in the dark. But instinct takes over. Actions reveal character, and you wish you could just pull the blanket back over your eyes rather than facing the truth. You find out, though, the truth is always hiding up someone's sleeve. You hope it's yours. In this case, you'd be wrong. You learn also that life has a sick sense of humor. Everything it gives you can explode in your face. The next time you see the last members of your family, your mentor and enemy would beg you to end his life, while your brother would sacrifice his own to save yours. And like that, you find out you can be orphaned over and over again. But at least you have an audience, until something newer and shinier comes flying by. Then everyone seems to forget you even existed. And then you find you need to change in order to be respected or recognized even. Sometimes that change is exactly what you need to put you on the road to who you really will be. Of course, there's always those rocky first steps, especially if there's a woman involved. It's even worse when you're out on your own. Perceptions of you are tough to change, even to yourself. It doesn't matter if you've got pressure on your occipital lobe or whatever. You can't always believe what you see or read. Sometimes you have to dig in and go with your gut. Know who you are and make sure everyone else sees it too. Later, Clint is playing with the heat sensors in his new glasses when Maria Hill interrupts his solitude. Hey, Mr. Sunglasses at Night. Hey, didn't peg you as an 80s music fan, Hill. It's the haircut. You got a call, she says as she turns on the display of a nearby monitor. Hawkeye jumps to his feet when he sees a recording of Trickshot coming from inside the tower. What the hell? He asks as he watches Trickshot collapse to the floor. Then, a voice echoes through the speaker saying, "He's here so you can pay your final respects. See you soon." The person says coldly before hanging up the call. Clint and Maria sprint out the room to find the collapsed Trickshot laying alone in the darkness. They summon Dr. Blake and a med cart in order to escort Trickshot into the medical wing. Dr. Blake does what he can, but Trickshot's injuries are intense. Whoever did this to him inflicted the trauma over at least the past year, maybe more. The jaundice of the skin and the leg swelling seem to indicate that the man, Shishom, Clint interrupts. His name is Buck Shishom. Trickshot? Maria asks. The guy who tried to kill you more than once? He reformed when he found out he had cancer. It made him rethink a lot. But it was in remission when I last saw him, Clint tells her. Dr. Blake apologizes to Clint, explaining that Mr. Shishom is no longer in remission. Any treatment he could have received appears to have been withheld from him over the past year. The only thing they can do is make the man comfortable. The doctor advises that it may be best if Clint uses this time to say his farewell. The others leave the room and give Clint and Buck some privacy. Clint, Trickshot mumbles. I'm so sorry. Don't, Clint tells him. We made our peace a long time ago. Just tell me who did this to you. He made me do it. I tried to say no. His benefactor, he called him, would help me if I trained him. Never thought I'd set foot in another circus. He's good. Almost as good as you. And he hates you. Won't stop until he kills you. I'm so sorry. Elsewhere, on Coney Island, a new Trickshot enters the grounds of a closed-down circus. He walks straight into a dilapidated building housing a hall of now broken mirrors and continues to the back of the building. Waiting on him is none other than Baron Zemo. Zemo stares at a litany of computer monitors, each showcasing individual Avengers, and asks the approaching Bowman the message was delivered. The new trick shot tells Zemo that he just wishes he could have seen the look on Hawkeye's face when he called. Do not deviate too far, Zemo warns. I've spent precious time over the past year investing in this for anything to go off book. The new trick shot asks Zemo, "You've been a great benefactor, and I wouldn't think of biting the hand that feeds me. But you think he'll take the bait?" Shishome is gone by now. There is no telling what he said or what Barton does or doesn't know. Regardless, he is a clever man. He'll be on the hunt. Whatever it is that is causing Hawkeye's aim to be off will be furthered by his rage. He will make mistakes, and we will capitalize on them. The new trick shot grabs 4 arrows and pulls back his bowstring before releasing them and hitting 4 separate monitors, each with Hawkeye's face on them. He tells Zemo, "Don't need to worry about any of that. I'm ready to take him in any state. Been waiting a long time for this. And, unlike Shishome, I got a lot more tricks up my sleeve." Zemo stands from his desk. I have waited. I have studied. I have sent his enemies against him to test his limits. I know this man, Hawkeye, and I know how to break him. He will come looking for vengeance, for answers, but all he will find is pain and loss. Ultimately, he will fall at the feet of Zemo and beg to die. Somewhere in Brooklyn, Hawkeye is on the prowl. He's been up for 3 days straight. At this point, everything's becoming a blur. Oh wait, that's just him going blind. As if he didn't have enough to deal with. But he's got to hand it to Tony and his toys. The new visor Clint was given compensates. For now. Arms deals have been on the rise lately. Clint spent the last few months breaking them up. Most of them have one common denominator: some mysterious benefactor increasing the number of guns and stolen goods coming in and out of New York. One of Clint's former mentor, Trickshot's last words mentioned a benefactor. Clint is just hoping these guys can provide a lead. It's a long shot, but that's what he's best at. Clint watches from a nearby rooftop as money is exchanged. Only then does he decide to make his move. He steps forward towards the ledge of the building, yelling down to the men, "Boys, I know we're in a recession and all, but crime really doesn't pay. Unless you count pain as a form of currency, in which you're all about to get rich quick." The criminals bring out their weapons and a barrage of bullets dirty the air. Hawkeye runs down the scaffolding on the side of the building in order to avoid the fire. He pulls out a number of trick arrows that capture a few of the less cerebral of the group in nets. Hawkeye leaps from one rooftop to the next, but due to his ongoing brain injury, he miscalculates the jump. His handy-dandy visor may tell him the distance, but he still needs to translate that in his brain. The same brain that's dealing with its own issues at the moment. However, that's never been a problem for Hawkeye, because when he can't think, he does what he does best: improvise. Hawkeye uses his grapple arrow to cling to a nearby water tank and safely swings to the ground. He then wields his bow like a katana to give himself some space as his enemies swarm him. A second wave arrives and Hawkeye flips through the alleyway, shooting up to 3 arrows at a time in order to down the black market thugs. Finally, when the last one collapses to the floor, Clint says, "Whoever wakes up first gets to play a game of 20 questions. Sound like fun?" "I don't know. Let's try a practice round," says a voice just seconds before Hawkeye is attacked. A hollow shield hits Hawkeye's bow. The vibrational kickback numbs Hawkeye's hand, almost causing him to drop it, and Hawkeye turns around to see Steve Rogers, the super soldier. "You've got some explaining to do, Clint. You're not cleared for active duty, which means Captain America's grounded me, and I snuck out. What are you gonna do, take away my car keys for a month?" "Something like that," Steve says as the hollow shield bounces back to him. "You want to do this the easy way?" Hawkeye has never done things the easy way. So why start now? Starting out the easy way would have been painting a big flag on his chest, like Steve. For the rest of them to be a real hero, sometimes they have to make their marks differently. In the past, a middle-aged man and his elderly mother are being held at knife point in an alleyway. The thieves order the woman to hand over her belongings, and she almost does, but Hawkeye appears, dispatches the thieves, and frees the gentleman and his mother in almost an instant. The elderly woman tells Hawkeye she won't be easily fooled. She's read the news. She knows full well that Clint is nothing more than a thug. The middle-aged man tells his mother, "Nonsense. Hawkeye is a hero. You do your best, but people already have their minds made up, and changing them can be tough. Really tough. Even when the mind you need to change the most is yours. Sometimes, all you need is a little help." A few days later, the middle-aged man finds Clint stopping another crime and introduces himself. His name is Edwin Jarvis, and he works for the Avengers. Jarvis does not arrive with an invitation, more like a ruse, a plan to trick the Avengers into letting Clint join the team, a ploy to get the Avengers to understand that they may know Clint as a criminal, but now he wants them to see him as a hero, an Avenger. Surprisingly, it works, and Hawkeye is drafted to the team with the other second wave Avengers, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. And while some things may be a dream come true, it's not always what you wished for. And suddenly, you start passing judgment on others, whether they deserve it or not. In the present, Hawkeye fires a number of arrows at Steve Rogers. Steve counters by throwing his hollow shield, but Hawkeye is able to dodge the attack by using his grapple arrow to pull him to a nearby rooftop. "Look, world leader, everyone else may fall in line when you come calling, but not this guy. Sometimes you gotta take things into your own hands." Steve tells Clint that normally he would be the first one to agree, but he's not the one going blind. "So we're clear, you're admitting you're a hypocrite. The guy who's gone off when he was dying, back from the dead, in armor, and am I missing any more?" Steve leaps to the top of the building stopping Hawkeye before he can get too far off, and tells Clint that they still need to wait until the situation has been fully evaluated. It's bad enough that Clint's rushing into this revenge crusade pissed off, but he hasn't even had time to test his new equipment out. To demonstrate, Steve throws his hollow shield into the surrounding metal pipes and ventilation systems. The thunderous clanging that follows overwhelms Clint, and he is brought to his knees. "What's happening?" he asks. His palms pressed hard around his ears and his eyes forced shut in a desperate attempt to shut out the sound. Steve sprints towards Clint, leaps over him, and steals one of the arrows from Clint's quiver. "Told you, your cowl's audio sensors aren't fully calibrated. You have no idea what else could go wrong. Now, come back in and let's deal with this as a team. Your family. You deal with it," Clint grits out. Steve shakes his head before throwing the arrow he removed from the quiver back at Clint's feet. "Just remember, you brought this on yourself." The arrowhead hits the ground and explodes. The force of the blast pushes Clint back, and for a split second, he blacks out. In the past, when Hawkeye first joined the Avengers, he wanted to test his own capabilities. So, he spars with Captain America. He loses. Badly. But, as the days pass, he does get better. All he needs, the captain says, is a little more focus, instead of all the snark. Of course, this agitates Clint. He came for a spar, not a lecture. Clint can't help but wonder why, out of everyone, the captain is so hypercritical of him. The answer is simple. It's his potential. To Steve, Clint has more potential than anyone else on the team. Who knows? Given time, he could even be the leader one day. In the court of public opinion, you don't always need a full jury for approval. Just one person to call you their peer is enough of a verdict, if it's the right person. In the present, Steve Rogers paces around Hawkeye. Those guys down there are a dead lead. You'd know that by examining the caliber and make of the dealing. You've always been your own worst enemy, Clint. You really are the best of us, but only when you want to be. Now, I think even you've had enough sense beaten into you for one night. You ready to end this? Clint turns to Steve and tells him, "Not even close." In reaction, Steve rockets his hollow shield, but Hawkeye fires an arrow that emits a polymer foam that disrupts the shield, rendering it useless. Steve rushes Hawkeye to close the gap, but Hawkeye outthinks him, dodges, and fires a taser arrow. It hits Steve directly in the chest and lets out enough of a shock to bring a super soldier down, painfully. Who needs field testing now, Boy Scout? Seems pretty clear I can handle pretty much anything all on my own, even you. That shock should wear off in about 10 seconds. Enough time for you to clean up the baddies below, or you could try to pick up my trail. Do us both a favor. Don't. This is my fight, and I've got my hands full enough without worrying about Mr. By the Books when it's convenient, chasing me down. Respect that. Hawkeye jumps on his sky cycle and makes a call to Maria Hill. He is happy to hear she has found a clue regarding Trickshot's killer. she's discovered hair samples, but no DNA matches as of yet. His boots, on the other hand, have traces of tin chloride and silver, as well as resins found in plexiglass. Also, there was quite a bit of sand. At this point, all she needs to do is process the data and narrow it down to which beach, sandbox, or construction site it all came from. In the past, Hawkeye is left out of a mission to capture the Black Widow. Others tell him that it's due to the nature of the mission. It may be wisest if he stays behind. He should try to enjoy the downtime. So patronizing. He refuses to be sidelined. Clint steals Hank Pym, Yellow Jacket's Pym particle formula, and takes up the mantle, Goliath. After that, Clint runs back into Barney. A new Barney, done with racketeering, now using his connections for good. Just when you think you've proven yourself to everybody, you find yourself taking a new path. There comes a time when you just stop listening to what people are telling you and start hearing what you want to hear. Hearing that voice in your head saying you're not good enough, you're weak, you aren't wanted. You hope it'll go away. Instead, ignoring it, or worse, acting on it, only makes the problems grow. A fresh start, a new start, you think. That's what you need. But no matter how far you run, the past always catches up with you. One chance. That's all Clint's brother wanted. A clean start. Like him. In the end, he did kinda get that. All it cost him was his life. In the present, Hawkeye is lost in thought. Trickshot's death is messing with him. He needs to focus and stop thinking about everything he's lost getting here. Shishom's clue on the benefactor is too broad. It isn't until Clint remembers something else Shishom said, that he had to train someone, that he never thought he'd set foot in another carnival. That's when Clint starts to put the pieces together. Tin and silver are used behind glass to make them into mirrors. Plexiglass can warp the look like in mirrors from a fun house, along with the sand from a beach. All of these clues now point him to Coney Island. At that moment, a detonator arrow hits Clint's sky cycle and begins to beep as it counts down from 3. With no time to think, Clint quickly grabs his quiver and jumps from the sky cycle in mid-air. The arrow detonates, causing the cycle to explode. Burning hot debris follows Clint down. He braces his fall and luckily hits the top of a train car speeding underway. That hurt, he tells himself, now attempting to roll off his stomach. Nuts! Now I gotta tell Tony I broke my new glasses on the first day. The new trick shot approaches. He asks Hawkeye, "Head into Coney Island without me? I should be hurt. Of course. I'm kinda more hurt it took you this long to figure it out. After all, you always were the smart one. And me, the tricky one." Clint is speechless. His eyes rattle up and down, scanning the man in disbelief. It's Barney. "Now," Barney tells him, "that, baby brother, is the look I've been dying to see. Zemo remembers. Hawkeye had an arrow for every one of them, Avenger and Thunderbolt alike. He'd led both, and stood at the crux of this. He had to choose the world or a woman he thought he loved. The simpleton never thought of the endless possibilities that lay between. With one shot, Clint Barton destroyed everything Helmut Zemo worked for, as well as the only woman Zemo had ever respected. They tried to reshape the world to save it from its own stupidity. They had a vision. He had a vision. But the world destroys visionaries, doesn't it? He had lost everything, which allowed for a fresh start. A blank canvas on which to paint a new world. New allies to be found. Carla Softon, Moonstone, always spoke to Zemo of her earlier days with Egghead and his Masters of Evil, and of the scientific breakthroughs he'd accomplished. Zemo wandered the Earth with the Moonstones as his guide until he came across a long-abandoned safe house. The man, Egghead, was a genius, almost as brilliant as Zemo. A pity his time on the world was cut short, another victim of Hawkeye. But Egghead kept meticulous records, and Zemo thought his work might yield some fruit still on the vine. True vengeance takes time, planning, power, and an unexpected gift from destiny. Something to help twist the knife even more. Currently, Clint continues to try to process what is happening. He thinks to himself that it's a trick. It has to be. An LMD, a hologram, his occipital blindness kicking in. Something, anything but this. Everything seems to be telling Clint that the impossible is true. Somehow, his brother, Barney Barton, is alive, and he wants to kill him. Clint tries to have Maria Hill confirm what he's seeing. What? No hug for your brother? After all of this time, first thing you do is make a phone call. We need some FaceTime, don't you think? My fist would like to talk to your face. Trickshot pulls out a baton and slams it against the side of Hawkeye's skull. Hawkeye falls down flat on the train. The rumbling of heavy metal under his ears keeps him awake long enough for his instincts to kick in. He leaps up and rolls to the side just in time to miss a follow-up attack from his brother. If the punching and the blowing up his sky cycle weren't enough, the arrow Trickshot begins to draw tells Clint Barney means business. Barney! Can we set aside the sibling rivalry for a second? I mean, we've both come back from the dead. We're pretty much even. How the fuck are you even standing here? Long story, and none of it thanks to you, little brother. Arrows were my thing. I thought yours were guns. Coming back from the dead isn't the only new trick you've learned. Trickshot fires the arrow, and in mid-air, it transforms into bolas that split before wrapping around Hawkeye's legs, trapping him and causing him to fall back down. You have no idea. Shishon made you who you are today, Hawkeye, and you turned your back on him. I took everything he had to offer. And you killed him, Hawkeye exclaims. I look at it more like trading up. Trickshot reborn. Ain't life funny that way? Barney slowly approaches Clint, and the hero is left defenseless against the next attack. A point-blank punch that knocks him out cold. Hours later, Hawkeye awakens, tied up, and laying near some trash. His occipital blindness was exasperated by the blow he took to the head in the fight with his brother. He should probably stop getting punched in the head. At the moment, all he can make out is the faint outline of an elephant floating in the air. In an attempt to end all of this, Clint calls to reason with his brother. Can you come out and talk about it? I'm sure we both have a lot of questions. At that moment, Hawkeye feels the rope binding him yank upward, pulling him into the air against his will. The salty smell of seawater fills his nostrils, and at once, Hawkeye knows he's at Coney Island. The rope pulls him all the way up to the seat of a roller coaster, stopped at the precipice of the highest drop, fastened together shoddily by a pair of metal bars. At the end of the drop, the roller coaster track is broken apart, creating a jump to the death. Hawkeye is dropped into the seat, and his added weight breaks the blockade, and the roller coaster cart begins to careen downward. The rope binding together Hawkeye's arms is fastened with a remote-controlled miniature bomb. It detonates, singeing Hawkeye's wrists, but frees him just in time for him to jump to safety. Trickshot sees this and shoots another pair of arrows at him, but Hawkeye dodges the attack, only to roll into another trap. A carnival shooting game set up with real revolvers, which are now pointed at Hawkeye. Barney, can you stop trying to kill me for 1 second? I told you, it's Trickshot now. Show some respect for the dead. You show some respect for the living. Drop the bow and we'll talk this out over a dog at Nathan's, okay? You saved us from Egghead, and then we had a funeral. There was a burial and everything. A letter from the CIA said you'd just been undercover. You were exonerated. You died a hero, just like you'd been all along. Hate to tell you, but you was played. My own brother, a mooch. All of it? Just a lie. You, what, faked your death? Nah, and there's the thing of it all. The one time I stick my neck out, try to be like my do-gooder baby-faced brother, I end up dead because of it. Or, close enough. But how? Egghead. I should have thrown my lot in with him in the first place. At least he had the common decency to check if I was really dead. Apparently, there was just enough life kicking around to stick me in a tube and let me heal up. But then, you went and cocked it all up again. You went and killed him, leaving me stuck in a weird-ass healing tube, alone, forgotten. I tried the hero gig, and look where it got me. Face it, you and me, we're opposite sides of the same coin, and that's how I like it. Trickshot shoots all the bearings holding the Ferris wheel in place with explosive arrows, destroying them and causing the wheel to roll down the boardwalk in Hawkeye's direction. It crushes everything in its path. Trickshot is out of the reach at the moment, but Hawkeye has bigger problems, which means he needs bigger solutions. Clint was saving pulling out Goliath for an emergency, but he would have to say this qualifies. He pulls out a hidden vial of PIM particles and opens it up. At once, Clint grows to over 50 feet. The boardwalk now cracks under his massive weight. However, even at this size, Hawkeye struggles to stop the Ferris wheel. But once he does, he tosses it aside like discarded furniture. Clint wonders to himself why his brother Barney has gone out of his way to try to kill him. But every time he has a clean shot, he hasn't taken it. Before he can dwell on it, Clint begins to shrink back down to normal size. The change in stature does a number on his brain. He reasons that a bigger brain must mean bigger swelling. Suddenly, the sound of a familiar voice booms through a nearby speaker.
Enough, Trickshot. It's time.
Barney chuckles and beckons his brother forward, telling him, "Come on, hero. You heard the man. Come meet the one guy who didn't give up on me, who made me the man I am today, my benefactor." Hawkeye's vision becomes distorted as he wanders into the hall of broken mirrors. Remnants of his past trick and taunt him. Not only is his vision failing, but the intake of PIM particles has caused a strain on his body. Hawkeye's knees buckle, and he falls into the glass in front of him before cutting himself. He second guesses himself. Barney's death made him rethink everything. Himself as a brother, as a hero, as a husband, as a man, as a leader. But just as quickly as they came together, you face the reality that it can all be taken away, leaving you with memories and ghosts. Hawkeye wakes up once again on the floor, this time at the feet of both his brother and Baron Zemo. Not everything stays down, baby brother. Baby brother, you listening? Get up.
Or, Barton, you can work yourself into a kneeling position. I will accept your prostration as a sign of submission.
Hawkeye snaps back. Zemo, you did this? You turned my brother into this. Baron Zemo smacks Hawkeye on the side of the head to silence him.
Oh no, this was a gift. When I found him after you had abandoned him in his moment of need, he came to me, willingly.
You know I didn't abandon.
Yet another in the list of people who sought revenge on you, all of whom accepted the gifts I had to offer. Zemo, their gracious benefactor. I swore to you that you would regret your actions the day you took Carla's mind.
all of this over a woman. She liked me more. Sheesh, get over it. How long's it been? You're making a stink over a woman.
Over my word. A Zemo always keeps his word, no matter how long it takes. And true pain takes time. With so many video cameras and satellites at one's disposal, it's easy to follow a man's life. I wondered if you were merely getting worn down by everything I'd thrown at you. If your mind was so preoccupied that you were missing shots. Instead, I find a simple blow to your head is robbing you of your sight. Take your ocular crutch. It is time for your final test. Your brother amassed quite a bit of wealth in his previous life. I've managed to unfreeze those accounts. He has trained long for this, not just to earn back the money, but to best you at your own sport, to finally be the better man. And you, will you die a hero, or live by once more killing someone you claim to love? What kind of man is Hawkeye?
Baron Zemo tosses Hawkeye's mask at his feet, and Hawkeye scurries to put it on, as his vision now begins to be consumed by a blackened fog. Back in Hawkeye's last days with the Thunderbolts, he had to make a hard choice and take a life. Zemo disagreed with his choice, to put it mildly. He threatened Clint, but, of course, Clint brushed it off. Who hasn't Zemo threatened? Now, after years of planning, Baron Zemo is finally showing his endgame. He just so happened to stumble on Clint's brother's near-dead body, brought him back to life, and trained him to kill Clint when the time is right. That time, apparently, is now, when Clint is completely blind. On a scale from 1 to screwed, Clint would say this ranks as royally. Baron Zemo taunts the two. Brother against brother. Those have long been the most fascinating of battles. It can bring out the best and the worst. Trickshot begins to monologue, and Hawkeye attempts to come up with a plan. He needs to keep his brother talking. His cowl, which was built to aid his eyesight, is starting to lose its effectiveness. It will be no good once his vision is completely shot. The only thing he can do now is go by his memory of the room. Clint wonders if this is what Daredevil has to do every day. Trickshot prepares an arrow. You know, I thought being a hero would have gotten me somewhere. Might be fun fighting next to my kid brother and the Avengers, but all I got was nearly blown up and left half to death. Till Zemo came along. He grabbed old Buck Shishum to train me, just like he trained you. Now, Buck's dead, and Barney Barton is the star pupil, and a new and better Trickshot. You know what all this life and death crap's taught me? what I want to make sure you know before you die. We both had our shots at being heroes and villains. It's a lot more fun being bad. Hawkeye pulls an explosive arrow from his quiver and shoots it. It flies right past his brother and detonates, causing the wooden wall panels and floorboards to splinter into the air. Blah, blah, crazy blah. I think I've heard enough. Clint knows that Barney's never been the brightest bulb, but he's actually right. Sometimes you just have to fight dirty. That's where trick arrows come in handy. As Trickshot dives out of the blast radius of the explosive arrow, Hawkeye shoots another. This one breaks apart in the air before illuminating into a blinding flash. After that comes the sonic arrows. Clint tries to reason with his brother. This isn't him. It's not how Clint remembers him. Barney was a hero. Clint's hero. That's how Clint's always seen him, and nothing Zemo can do will change that. Flames begin to crackle and grow as they consume a corner of the room. Dense smoke clouds fill the air, impairing Hawkeye's vision even more. Trickshot rushes him and swings his bow like a katana. Hawkeye dodges the attack, and Trickshot follows up by shooting another triple shot of arrows. Hawkeye tries to dodge, but one of the arrows grazes him, knocking him off balance and crashing into a stack of wooden crates. There goes reasoning, Clint thinks, and any hope he had of ending this while he still had some semblance of where things are in the room. If he could only get some balance. Blind archery is new, for Clint at least, and not fun at all. Zemo, growing impatient, turns to Trickshot and warns him, I do hope you're using the one thing your brother is missing now. You gotta be kidding me. I'm fighting a blind guy. If he wasn't my brother, I'd almost feel bad. Their short conversation is interrupted when Clint leaps out and fires another couple of explosive arrows. He misses his mark, and the arrows detonate too close, sending Hawkeye flying backwards. The fire begins to spread viciously, blocking the two for a moment until Trickshot leaps through the embers with another triple shot of arrows prepared. He shoots them, and then 3 more, and 3 more after that. He doesn't stop. No more hide and seek, Trickshot orders him. We outgrew that dodging dad's punches. Do us both a favor though. Beg a little. I want to hear what's going through that blind skull of yours. Clint collapses to the ground, and Barney picks him up by his collar. First, he hits the hero with a strong right jab that shatters Clint's nose. Then, a left hook to the body that causes Clint to lose what little stamina he has left. Barney finishes the combo with a precise kick to the stomach that sends Clint falling back down to the floor. He picks Clint up again. Just like old times, Clint says, struggling to speak, but smiles through the pain. Old times? Those are your last words? No, Clint spits out a bit of blood. These are. Dad would be so proud. Barney lifts his fist into the air, and he trembles as he tries to contain his rage. You little piece of... While his brother is momentarily distracted, Clint attacks. He backhands Barney across the room, but the villain is instantly back on his feet in order to fight hand to hand. However, this was Clint's plan all along. Barney may be a skilled fighter, but Clint has seen all his moves before, because he's gone through them all before with their mutual mentor, Buck Chisholm. Hawkeye has one last arrow, a water trick arrow that he throws down to the floor. It shatters and splashes at his brother's feet. "Water?" Trickshot asks. "What do you think I am, Electro? And you missed, Big Shot." Trickshot takes a step through the puddle, and the sound of the splash activates the hearing sensors in Hawkeye's cowl. If Hawkeye's assumption is right, Trickshot must be down to his last arrow as well. Just as he thought, he can hear the sound of his brother pulling back his last arrow. Surprising everyone, Hawkeye catches Trickshot's last arrow in mid-air, reels back, and throws it as hard as he can back at his brother. The arrow implants itself in Trickshot's shoulder, and he staggers backwards into the wall behind him. "What the fuck?" he asks, bewildered. Hawkeye explains the first lesson of being a bowman. Make every shot count. The second lesson is anything can be a weapon in the right hands. "I'd love for you to be as good as me one day, brother, fighting side by side. But first, you kinda have to be good. Dad beat up on innocence because he liked it. Trust me, Barney, I hate this." Hawkeye hits Trickshot with a hook to the chin and knocks him down for the count. Baron Zemo simply claps. "Well done, Barton. Of course, that could be said to either of you. I knew you couldn't kill him, but at least you have grown a conscience since we last met. And still, you surprise me." Hawkeye finds Zemo's sword laying on the ground and points it in the direction of Zemo's voice. "Wish I could say the same." Zemo quietly walks around the blade and approaches Hawkeye. "There is no more need for violence. Consider this a draw. I swore to you that you would pay, and you have. A loved one for a loved one." Hawkeye follows Zemo's voice and elbows him, knocking the villain to the ground. "How biblical of you. But when it comes to me and you, there's always a need for violence." Zemo picks himself up. "I underestimated you. Surprising." "Hardly. You of all people should know that. You did all of this, sending assassins after me, everything for the past year. But the worst of it is what you did to Barney. He had a chance until you came along and screwed him up. This is far from a draw, helmet." Baron Zemo trips Hawkeye and scrambles to his computer. "Think what you will of me, Barton, but I am a man of my word. To the victor goes the spoils. In this round, you have won." Your brother's assets he collected through extortion and murder years ago are all yours now. Congratulations. You are now a very wealthy man. Granted, it's blood money. But your brother's. It's practically your blood on there. Can you ever wash the stain out? Or will this be your legacy? Once Zemo's work is complete, he turns to Hawkeye and says his goodbyes. He then presses a button on his utility belt and begins to vanish as he teleports away. Hawkeye tries to tackle Zemo before he can get away, but he is too late and crashes into another set of crates. Not long after that, backup finally arrives. Captain America and Iron Man find Hawkeye laying in a pool of his own blood and quickly transport him back to Avengers Tower. After a quick emergency procedure, Clint can see again. However, Dr. Blake warns Clint not to push himself. They found trace elements of pin particles in Clint's blood work. They're old, dormant, and probably from Clint's Goliath days. But Clint must have triggered them recently. Tony and Donald were able to use the particles to temporarily reduce the swelling on Clint's occipital lobe. However, this fix won't be permanent. Fortunately, Clint has a donor. He looks across the room and sees his brother Barney asleep in a hospital bed, just like him. Tony explains that Barney is providing his bone marrow, just enough of what they need. Lucky for Clint, Barney is a savior sibling. Siblings can sometimes be a perfect genetic match for stem cell transplants. It's still in clinical trials, but they are hoping that Barney's hematopoietic stem cells will mix with Clint's genetic makeup and regenerate the damage done to his occipital lobe. After the surgery, Clint wakes up good as new. He will be staying in recovery for the next few days. But the good news is, according to his brain scans, he won't be needing the cowl anymore. Tony recommends that Clint holds onto the glasses, at least, for the time being. He never knows what might happen in the future. Clint apologizes for the trouble he's caused and thanks the others for helping out. But he has some unfinished business to attend to. Clint walks into the next room and finds his brother awake in his bed, locked down by handcuffs. "You lived," Barney mutters. "Thanks to you. Did you consent to the transplant?" "Doesn't matter. To me, yeah. It's the last thing you'll get from me, till I put an arrow between your eyes. I'm not giving up on us. Your mistake. Only one way this is gonna end, baby brother. It's in my blood, and now yours. One of us is gonna have to kill the other, and I ain't gonna stop until it happens." Days later, Hawkeye returns to Coney Island. He walks through the broken hall of mirrors and makes his way back to the computer lab Zemo and his brother used as a base of operations. Everything started for him there, as Hawkeye, at least. Now, trick shot. Him and his brother both started off as villains there. Misunderstood for Clint. He's hoping the same can be said for Barney. Too many people have been screwed up there on Coney Island. Buck Shishom, Barney, Clint. And it's time to change that. Thanks to Zemo, of all people. No, it's not gonna be easy. Fixing everything Barney's done, or cleaning up his own messes Clint's left behind. But at least he's not going in blind or alone.